The sound of a broom pushing industrial sweeping compound across concrete is a specific frequency. It is a low, rhythmic shh, shh that lives in the 200 Hz range. It is the sound of invisibility. I pushed the broom. Shh. I watched the dust motes dance in the halo of the high-pressure sodium, lights hanging 50 feet above my head. Hangar 4 at JFK International Airport was a cathedral of cold steel and colder echoes. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, and the space was vast enough to hold a cloud system of its own. Tonight, however, it held something heavier. A Boeing 777-300ER, tail number N894S, sat in the centre of the bay. It was a beautiful machine, a masterpiece of aluminum, titanium, and carbon fibre composite. The GE90 engines, massive enough to swallow a minivan, were silent. They were cold. They shouldn't be cold. A plane on the ground is a dying animal. It is designed to move at Mach 0.84 at 35,000 feet. Sitting here, resting on its landing gear, the hydraulic fluids settle, the seals dry out, and the money evaporates. Shh. I pushed the broom. I smelled the air. It was a cocktail I'd been drinking for 50 years. Jet, a one fuel, burnt rubber, hydraulic fluid, skydrol, acidic and sweet, and the faint, metallic tang of ozone coming off the storm front outside. Move, Bill. For Christ's sake, you're in the way. The voice cracked across the hangar like a whip. I didn't flinch. I just stopped the broom. I looked up slowly. My grandson, Ryan, was pacing under the starboard wing of the 777. He was 29 years old, wearing a suit that cost more than my annual salary as a night watchman. He was the vice president of operations for Stratum Airlines. Right now, he looked like a child whose toy had been broken. He was screaming into his iPhone, his free hand chopping the air. "No, I don't care what the Port Authority says," Ryan yelled. "I have 6 wide bodies sitting on the tarmac at Heathrow and 4 more stuck in Dubai. If I don't get them into JFK by 600, the crew times out. Do you understand what crew timeout means? It means I have to put 300 people in hotels I don't have budget for." He listened for a second, his face turning a shade of crimson that clashed with the Stratum Airlines logo on the fuselage behind him. "The wind shear is 40 knots, Ryan scoffed. "It's a 777, not a paper airplane. It can handle 40 knots. Just clear the approach." He hung up. He slammed the phone into his pocket. He looked at me. "What are you looking at?" he snapped. "The floor," I said. My voice was rusty. I didn't use it much on the night shift. "It's dirty." Ryan kicked the massive main landing gear tire of the 777. Thud. "Everything is a mess," he muttered, running a hand through his gelled hair. "We are bleeding, Bill. We are bleeding $1 million an hour. And here you are, pushing dirt around." "The tire," I said. Ryan blinked. "What?" "The number 4 main tire," I said, nodding slightly toward the rubber he had just kicked. "It sounds hollow. The pressure is low. Probably 190 pounds per square inch. Should be 205 for a heavy load configuration." Ryan rolled his eyes. He let out a harsh, dismissive laugh. "Jesus, Bill. You're the janitor. Stick to the trash cans. I have certified mechanics to worry about tire pressure. I have a fleet to save." "Just an observation," I said. "Well, keep them to yourself," Ryan said, turning away. "Go empty the bins in the war room. The data team is drowning in Red Bull cans. Make yourself useful. Or at least invisible." He walked away, his dress shoes clicking frantically on the concrete, heading toward the glass-walled operations control center that overlooked the hangar floor. I watched him go. I looked at the tire. It was low. I didn't need a gauge. I could hear the resonance of the kick. I could see the sidewall deflection. I pushed the broom again. Shh. They didn't know. Ryan didn't know. To him, I was Grandpa Bill. The old man who lost his pension in 2008. The man who needed a charity job to keep the lights on. The man who smelled like cleaning solvent and Old Spice. He didn't know that, before computers decided where planes flew, men did. He didn't know that I was the compass. In the 1970s and 80s, I designed the global logistics chains for the largest air freight carriers in the world. I mapped the trans-Pacific corridors during the oil crisis. I calculated fuel loads with a slide rule and a pencil while sitting in a bunker in Anchorage. I knew the weight of the air. I knew the curvature of the earth, not as a variable in a Python script, but as a physical sensation in my gut. But that was a long time ago, before the algorithms, before the AI, before the boys in suits took over the sky. I leaned the broom against the wall. I wiped my hands on my grey work trousers. Time to take out the trash. The Operations Control Center, the OCC, or the War Room, was the brain of the airline. It was a massive, tiered room encased in soundproof glass, suspended above the hangar floor like a bridge on a starship. I swiped my janitor's keycard. The door hissed open. The noise hit me instantly. It wasn't the mechanical noise of the hangar. It was the digital noise of panic. Dozens of people were shouting. Phones were ringing. But mostly it was the sound of aggressive typing. The room was dominated by a video wall 60 feet wide, displaying a digital map of the world. Usually that map was a spiderweb of green lines, Stratum Airlines flights moving passengers and cargo across the globe. Tonight the map was bleeding. Red lines, hundreds of them, cancelled, diverted, holding. And in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, a massive swirling purple bruise. The bomb cyclone. It was a meteorological monster. A rapid cyclogenesis event where the barometric pressure dropped 24 millibars in 24 hours. It had parked itself right over the North Atlantic tracks, the invisible highways in the sky that connect Europe to America. I pushed my grey rubber trash cart into the room. I kept my head down. I wore my cap low. I was part of the furniture. "It's a wall!" a young man in a hoodie yelled. He was standing at a terminal, pointing at the purple bruise. "The algorithm can't find a path through it. The headwinds are 180 knots. If we fly into that, we burn the reserves before we hit Nova Scotia. We'll have to ditch in the ocean." Ryan was standing at the head of the room, staring at the screen. He looked like he was about to vomit. "Go around it!" Ryan shouted. "Go south. Route them through the Azores." "We can't, sir," a woman replied. She was the chief meteorologist. "The storm tail extends to Bermuda. To go around south would add 4 hours to the flight time. The 777s don't have the fuel load for that diversion. They're already heavy with cargo." "Then go north!" Ryan slammed his fist on the desk. "Go over Greenland." "The AI tried that," the hoodie kid, the lead data scientist, said. "It's rejecting the route. The polar vortex is destabilized. The temps at altitude are too low. The fuel will gel. The algorithm says no valid solution. It's a hard lock." The room fell silent. A hard lock from the routing AI. I was the word of God. It meant physics had closed the door. Ryan's phone rang. He looked at the caller. ID. He paled. "It's the chairman," he whispered. He answered the speakerphone. "Ryan!" A voice boomed, distorted by the line. "Report." "Sir," Ryan stammered. We are experiencing significant weather delays. The Atlantic is closed." "I don't care about the weather, Ryan," the chairman said. His voice was cold, detached from the reality of wind and rain. "We have the quarterly earnings call on Thursday. If those planes are sitting on the ground when the market opens, our stock drops below $5. If we drop below $5, the bank calls the loans. If the bank calls the loans, we file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy by Friday afternoon." Ryan swallowed. The sound was audible in the quiet room. I understand, sir." "You have 6 hours, Ryan. Get the fleet into the air, or don't bother coming in tomorrow." Click. The line went dead. Ryan stood there, frozen. The weight of 3,000 jobs, $1 billion of hardware, and his own career was crushing him. He looked at the red map. He looked at the impossible purple bruise blocking the world. "I need a minute," Ryan whispered. He turned and walked out of the war room, heading towards the executive washroom. I knew that walk. It was the walk of a man who needed to empty his stomach because his nerves had tied it into a knot. The rest of the staff slumped in their chairs. The hoodie kid took a sip of Red Bull and rubbed his eyes. "It's over," he muttered to the meteorologist. "The math doesn't work. We can't punch through, we can't go under, we can't go around." "Maybe if we offload cargo," she suggested. "Lighten the planes?" "It would take too long." He shook his head. "And we'd lose the freight contracts. Amazon would sue us into oblivion." They turned back to their screens, staring hopelessly at the error messages. I moved my trash cart. The wheels squeaked. Squeak, squeak. I walked over to the main recycling bin near the video wall. I pulled out the bag of aluminum cans. I looked up at the map. It was a beautiful display. 8K resolution, real-time satellite overlay. It showed the clouds, the pressure isobars, the wind vectors. It showed the bomb cyclone spinning counterclockwise, a massive engine of kinetic energy. The computer saw a wall. I saw a river. I stood there holding a bag of trash, looking at the isobars. I narrowed my eyes. The AI was programmed for efficiency. It wanted the shortest distance between 2 points, the Great Circle route. But the storm was sitting on the Great Circle. So the AI tried to divert, but the diversions hit secondary constraints, fuel limits, temp limits. The AI was thinking in 2D. It was thinking about distance across the ground. It wasn't thinking about the air. I looked north, way north, past Greenland, past the standard tracks. I looked at the jet stream. Usually you want to ride the stream, a river of fast air moving west to east. But the cyclone had buckled the stream. It had twisted it. There was a ridge, a high-pressure ridge sitting over the Canadian archipelago. It was invisible to the standard routing software because it looked like a detour. It looked like going backward to go forward. But I saw the pressure gradient. The storm was spinning counterclockwise. The high pressure was spinning clockwise. Between them, there was a slot, a narrow, turbulent, but fast-moving corridor of air where the two systems rubbed against each other. It wasn't a headwind. It was a slingshot. I looked around. The staff was distracted, defeated. They were looking at their phones, updating their resumes. I reached into the pocket of my work shirt. I pulled out a black dry erase marker. I usually used it to mark broken pallets in the hangar. I stepped up to the glass wall that covered the massive map. I shouldn't do this. I was the janitor. I was the ghost. But I looked down at the hangar floor. I saw the 777. I thought about the pilots, the mechanics, the baggage handlers. I thought about Ryan, throwing up in the bathroom because he thought he was a failure. He was arrogant. He was rude. But he was my blood, and he was trying to fly. I uncapped the marker. The smell of the ink was sharp. I reached up to the glass. I didn't draw a straight line. Planes don't fly in straight lines. They fly in curves over the sphere of the earth. I drew a curve that started at Heathrow, but instead of going west toward New York, I drew it northwest, toward Iceland. Then I cut it sharp, a hard right turn, north, into the teeth of the Arctic. I drew the line threading the needle between the purple bruise of the storm and the white mass of the polar ice cap. I drew it looping over the top of the world, grabbing the backside of the high-pressure ridge. Then, a steep descent vector, diving south over Canada, using gravity and the compression of the cold air to regain the fuel burned in the climb. It looked insane. On the map, it looked like a question mark. It looked like adding 1,000 miles to the trip. But I knew the math. Drag increases with the square of velocity. Cold air is dense. Engines burn cleaner. The tailwind from the ridge would be 140 knots. I wrote 3 numbers next to the curve on the glass. HDG, 340 FL, 410 fuel, plus 4.2%, heading 340 degrees. Flight level 41,000 feet, higher than normal to get above the turbulence. Fuel load plus 4.2% to handle the initial climb. I capped the marker. I put it back in my pocket. I grabbed the trash bag. I turned to leave. The door to the OCC opened. Ryan walked in. He looked pale. He'd splashed water on his face, but his eyes were red. He looked like a man walking to his execution. "Okay," Ryan said, his voice hollow. "Draft the press release. Tell them we're cancelling the fleet. Tell them." He stopped. He was looking at the video wall. He saw the black marker line drawn directly over the millions of dollars of digital projection. "What?" Ryan frowned. "Who drew on my board?" The room went silent. The hoodie kid looked up. The meteorologist looked up. "I said," Ryan shouted, his anger returning as a defense mechanism. "Who the hell drew on the main display? Is this a joke? We are going bankrupt and someone is drawing graffiti." He marched up to the glass. He reached for a rag to wipe it off. Then his hand stopped. He hovered inches from the black ink. He looked at the line. He looked at the heading. HDG, 340. He looked at the flight level. FL, 410. Ryan was an MBA. He wasn't a pilot. But he had been around aviation long enough to know the basics. "North?" Ryan whispered. "Why would you go north?" "It's the slingshot." The chief pilot, Captain Vance, no relation, just a good man, spoke up from the back of the room. He had been sitting quietly in the shadows, drinking coffee. Captain Vance walked up to the board. He was a grey-haired man with 4 stripes on his shoulder. He looked at the line I had drawn. He traced it with his finger. "It's a counterflow," Vance murmured. "Look, the storm is pushing east, but the polar ridge is pushing south. If you thread the needle right there," he tapped the glass where the line curved, "you pick up the backside of the ridge. It acts like a conveyor belt. But the distance," the hoodie kid argued, typing furiously on his laptop. It adds 800 miles to the track. The algorithm rejected it. Run it, Ryan said. What? Run the simulation, Ryan barked. Input these coordinates, right now. Heading 340, flight level 410. The hoodie kid rolled his eyes. Sir, it's going to fail. The fuel burn on the ascent alone will trigger a critical warning. Just do it, Ryan screamed. The kid typed. Clack, clack, clack. He hit enter. The big screen flickered. A loading bar appeared. Simulating route. I stood by the door, holding my trash cart. I didn't move. Calculating Windsor loft. Calculating fuel burn. The room held its breath. The silence was absolute. Then the screen turned green. Route valid. Estimated arrival. On time. Fuel reserve. Plus 2.1%. The hoodie kid's jaw dropped. No way. That's a glitch. It's not a glitch, Captain Vance said, smiling for the first time in 12 hours. It's physics. The density altitude at flight level 410 over the pole offsets the drag of the extended distance. And the tailwind, my God, the tailwind is 160 knots. He turned to Ryan. Sir, this works. We clear the storm wall completely. It's smooth air all the way down. Ryan stared at the screen. The green line of the simulation overlaid perfectly with the black marker line I had drawn. We can fly? Ryan whispered. We can fly, Vance confirmed. If we launch now, we make the morning bank at JFK. Ryan let out a breath that sounded like a tire deflating. He leaned against the console, trembling. Do it, Ryan ordered. Upload the flight plan to the fleet. Tell Heathrow to push back. Tell Dubai to spin them up. We're going over the top. The room erupted. People started shouting orders, phones were grabbed, typing resumed. But this time, it was the sound of action, not panic. Ryan didn't move. He kept staring at the black ink on the glass. He turned slowly. He looked around the room. Who generated this? Ryan asked. The hoodie kid shook his head. Not me. The AI didn't see it. Then who? Ryan demanded. Who walked up here and drew the solution to $1 billion problem on the wall? He looked at the meteorologist. She shook her head. He looked at Captain Vance. Not me, boss, Vance said. I didn't see the ridge until it was pointed out. That's old school navigation. That's dead reckoning stuff. I haven't seen a chart like that since the 80s. Ryan spun around. He scanned the room. He saw the empty chairs. He saw the busy staff. Then his eyes landed on the door. He saw me. I was standing there leaning on my grey trash cart, my cap pulled low. Ryan looked at me. He looked at the marker in my pocket, the black cap peeking out of my grey shirt. He scoffed. He shook his head. Bill, he said dismissively, did you see anyone come in here while I was in the bathroom? A consultant? A pilot? I gripped the handle of the cart. My knuckles were white. No, I said. Just the cleaning crew. Ryan sighed. Figures. Probably some hotshot pilot from the Union trying to make a point, and disappeared. Whatever. We saved the airline. He turned back to the screens, clapping his hands. Let's go, people. I want wheels up in 10 minutes. I backed out of the room. The door hissed shut. I stood in the quiet hallway. I took a deep breath of the recycled air. I pulled the marker out of my pocket. I capped it tight. The planes would fly. The cargo would move. The system would survive. I walked back to the elevator. I had to finish sweeping Hangar 4. The 777 wasn't going to check its own tyre pressure. The last route. Part 2. The sunrise over JFK International Airport is not romantic, it is industrial. The sun doesn't rise, it bleeds through a layer of smog, jet exhaust, and particulate matter, turning the sky the colour of a bruised peach. I stood by the open bay doors of Hangar 4, leaning on my broom. My shift was technically over at 6 a.m, but I stayed. I wanted to hear them come in. And then I heard it, the low, thundering rumble of high bypass turbofans in reverse thrust. I looked out toward runway 31 left. A massive silhouette broke through the morning haze. A Stratum Airlines Boeing 7478F, heavy with cargo from Heathrow. It touched down with a screech of rubber that sounded like music. Then another, a 777 from Dubai. Then another. They were landing in a rhythmic procession, a conveyor belt of aluminum and titanium dropping out of the sky. They were tired, they were frosted with ice from the high-altitude polar crossing, but they were safe. And more importantly for the men in suits, they were on time. I watched the 747 taxi past the hangar. The pilot waved from the cockpit. He didn't see me, of course. He was waving at the ground crew, but I raised my hand slightly, a small salute to the machine. "Welcome home," I whispered. Inside the operations control center, I knew it would be a different scene. Champagne corks popping, high fives, the stock ticker turning green. I turned back to the hangar. The floor was clean. The trash was empty. My job was done. I walked over to the grounded 777-300ER N894S. The one Ryan had been screaming at last night. The one with the low tire. I pulled a pressure gauge from my back pocket. I uncapped the valve stem on the number 4 main gear. I pressed the gauge. Hiss! 188 psi. It had lost 2 pounds overnight. Slow leak. Probably the valve core. I sighed. I couldn't leave it. A low tire heats up on takeoff. Heat causes delamination. Delamination causes a blowout. A blowout at 180 knots sends rubber shrapnel through the wing fuel tanks. That's how Concorde died. I walked to the maintenance locker to get a nitrogen cart and a wrench. Up in the executive suite of Stratum Airlines, the atmosphere was electric. I wasn't there, but I knew what it looked like. I had been in those rooms 40 years ago. Ryan would be standing at the head of the conference table. The board members would be on the monitors. The stock price would be projected on the wall, up 12% in pre-market trading. Later that morning, I saw the news on the break room TV. The Arctic slingshot, the CNBC anchor called it. A daring, unconventional routing strategy that saved Stratum Airlines from a catastrophic operational failure. While other carriers grounded their fleets due to the bomb cyclone, Stratum flew over the weather, utilizing a rare polar counterflow stream. A stroke of genius from the airline's VP of Operations, Ryan Halloway. On the screen, Ryan was standing at a podium. He looked exhausted. He was smiling, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. He looked like a man who had won the lottery but lost his ticket. It was a team effort, Ryan told the reporters. We looked at the data, and we found a path where others saw a wall. He was lying. He knew he was lying, and the weight of it was eating him alive. I turned off the TV. I picked up my wrench. It was 10 a.m. when the hangar door pedestrian access buzzed. I was under the 777, grease up to my elbows. I was replacing the valve core on the wheel assembly. It was dirty work. My knuckles were scraped. "Bill?" The voice echoed in the cavernous space. I didn't slide out immediately. I tightened the nut. Torque spec, 95 inch-pounds. Click. I slid out from under the landing gear on my creeper. Ryan stood there. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket. His tie was loosened. He was holding a tablet in one hand and a styrofoam cup of coffee in the other. He looked like he hadn't slept in 30 hours. "Ryan," I said, wiping my hands on a rag. "You're late for the victory lap. Shouldn't you be popping bottles with the chairman?" Ryan didn't smile. He stared at me. He stared at my grease-stained jumpsuit. He stared at the broom leaning against the wall. "I checked the tapes," Ryan said. His voice was flat. "The security footage from the war room," he continued. "I pulled the logs from 2:15 a.m. to 2:30 a.m. I wanted to see who the consultant was. I wanted to hire him." He took a step closer. "There was no consultant, Bill. There was no pilot. There was no secret agent from the FAA." He tapped the tablet screen. He turned it around to face me. The grainy black and white footage played. It showed a figure in a janitor's uniform pushing a trash cart. The figure stopped. The figure pulled a marker from his pocket. The figure drew a line that saved $1 billion company. "It was you," Ryan whispered. I stood up. My knees popped. I took the rag and cleaned a spot of grease off my forearm. "I was emptying the trash," I said. "The board was messy. I cleaned it up." "Don't give me that," Ryan snapped. He sounded scared. "You didn't clean it. You drew a great circle route with a polar offset. You calculated a fuel load differential in your head. In seconds. I have a team of data scientists from MIT who couldn't see that route with a supercomputer. And you're the night watchman." He looked around the hangar, as if seeing it for the first time. "You barely know how to use a microwave, Grandpa. You refuse to get a smartphone. You listen to AM radio." "How? How did you know the atmospheric density of the polar ridge?" "Physics is physics, Ryan," I said. "It doesn't change just because you put it on an iPad." "That's not an answer," Ryan yelled. His voice broke. "Do you know what it felt like? Standing there this morning? Taking credit for that? I felt like a fraud. I am a fraud. I need to know how you did it." I looked at him. I saw the desperation. He was a good kid, deep down. He just lived in a world of abstractions. He thought the map was the territory. "I didn't use an algorithm," I said softly. "I used the wind. The machine looks for the shortest line. I looked for the fastest air. It's not magic. It's sailing. You just have to know the currents." "Sailing," Ryan scoffed. "We're flying Boeing jets, not sailboats." "Same fluid dynamics," I said. "Just faster." I turned back to the tire. "I have to finish this nitrogen fill. The pressure is critical." "Stop!" Ryan grabbed my arm. "Stop fixing the damn tire. I don't care about the tire. I care about the fact that my grandfather apparently has a PhD in aerodynamics that he never told me about." He let go of my arm. He was breathing hard. "I'm going to find out," Ryan said. "I'm going to find out where you learned that, because you didn't learn it sweeping floors." He turned and ran out of the hangar. I watched him go. I hooked up the nitrogen hose. Hiss. He would find it. If he was smart enough to be VP, he was smart enough to use the search function in the archives. I hoped the paper hadn't rotted. It had been 40 years after all. Ryan didn't come back for 2 hours. When he did, he wasn't running. He was walking slowly. He was carrying a file folder. It was old, yellowed, and smelled of dust. It was marked with a red stamp. Declassified. ISA-AO archive. He walked up to me. I was sitting on a crate, drinking water. He didn't say anything. He just held out the file. I didn't take it. I knew what was in it. Project North Star, Ryan whispered. 1982. A study commissioned by the International Civil Aviation Organization to optimize transpolar freight routes during the Cold War. The goal was to bypass Soviet airspace while maintaining fuel efficiency for the new 747-200 fleet. He opened the file. His hands were shaking. It outlines the exact atmospheric phenomenon we used last night, the polar slingshot. It details the pressure ridge variance. It has the charts, the math, the fuel burn calculations. He turned to the last page. And at the bottom, Ryan said, his voice trembling, there's a signature. He turned the page toward me. The ink was faded, blue ballpoint scratched into the paper with the force of a heavy hand. Authorized by William Halloway. Title, Lead Logistician / Chief of Global Routing. Ryan looked at me. He looked at the signature. He looked at the janitor. You, Ryan said. You designed the grid, the airways, the waypoints, the entire system we use today. The VOR stations, the Atlantic tracks. You built them. I helped, I said. I was part of a team. You were the lead, Ryan corrected. I read the bio in the file. The compass. That's what they called you. You were a legend. You routed the Berlin airlift relief supplies in the 70s. You designed the logistical chain for Desert Storm. He dropped the file to his side. He looked betrayed. Why? Ryan asked. Why are you here? Why are you pushing a broom in a hangar for minimum wage? You should be the CEO. You should be retired on a yacht. Why did you lie to me my whole life? I took a sip of water. The plastic bottle crinkled in the silence. I didn't lie, I said. I just stopped talking about work. But why leave? Ryan pressed. You were at the top. I left because of the screens, I said. I pointed to the operations centre high above us, glowing with its blue light. In '95, they brought in the first supercomputers, the optimizers. They said we didn't need navigators anymore. They said the box could do it faster. And they were right. It was faster. I looked at the plane. But the box doesn't feel the weather, Ryan. The box doesn't know that a headwind smells different than a tailwind. It calculates probability. It doesn't calculate survival. I stood up. I saw where it was going. Pilots becoming operators. Logisticians becoming data entry clerks. I didn't want to sit in a room and watch a computer fly the planes I used to guide with a pencil. I missed the metal. I missed the smell of the fuel. I missed the truth of it. I kicked the tyre I had just filled. It made a solid, deep thump. This, I said, this is real. If I fix this tyre, the plane rolls safely. If I screw it up, people die. There's no algorithm to hide behind. It's honest work. And at the end of the night, I sleep. Ryan stared at me. He looked at the massive plane. He looked at the complex world he managed, and he realized how fragile it was. You saved us, Ryan whispered. You saved the whole company. I just connected the dots, kid. I shrugged. Planes are like blood cells. If they stop moving, the body dies. I just cleared a blockage. Ryan took a deep breath. He straightened his tie. He looked like he had made a decision. I can't let you stay down here, Ryan said. Not anymore. I'm offering you a job. Senior advisor to the board. Corner office. Name your salary. I don't care if it's 7 figures. We need you. We need the compass back in the room. He held out his hand. Come upstairs, Grandpa. Teach us. Teach the AI how to think. I looked at his hand. Soft, manicured, the hand of a man who types. I looked at my hand, calloused, stained with grease, the hand of a man who fixes. I smiled. No, I said. Ryan blinked. What? Bill, you can't be serious. You want to sweep floors? I don't want to be in the boardroom, Ryan, I said. I hate meetings. I hate PowerPoint. And I hate suits. I picked up my wrench. Besides, I said, if I go upstairs, who's going to check the tyre pressures? You think your data scientists are going to come down here and get their hands dirty? We can hire people, Ryan said. You did hire people, I said. You hired me. And I'm doing the job. I walked over to the nitrogen cart and started coiling the hose. I like the quiet, Ryan. I had my time in the sun. I moved the world. Now I just want to watch it move. Ryan stood there for a long time. The sounds of the hangar, the distant whine of drills, the hum of the ventilation, filled the space between us. He looked at the file in his hand, the legacy of William Halloway. Then, slowly, he closed the folder. He understood. He didn't like it, but he understood. Okay, Ryan said softly. Okay. He looked at the tyre I had fixed. Is it safe? He asked. 190 psi, I said. Dead on. She's ready to roll. Ryan nodded. He looked at me with a new expression. It wasn't pity anymore. It wasn't annoyance. It was reverence. Thank you, Ryan said, for the route and for the tyre. Don't thank me, I said. Just keep them flying. And Ryan? Yeah? Tell your pilots to watch the exhaust gas temperature on the number 2 engine. It's running 10 degrees hot. I can hear it. Ryan laughed. It was a genuine laugh, full of disbelief. You can hear a 10-degree variance? I can hear everything, I said. Ryan turned to leave. He walked a few steps, then stopped. He looked back at me, standing in the shadow of the wing. I'll see you Sunday for dinner, Ryan asked. If you're buying, I said. Steak, Ryan promised. The best in the city. He walked out of the hangar, clutching the yellowed file to his chest like a shield. I watched him go. He walked taller than he had yesterday. He had learned the lesson. The map is not the territory. The screen is not the sky. I checked my watch. 12:15 p.m. The 777 was scheduled for pushback at 12:30. I walked to the massive bay doors and hit the button to open them fully. Sunlight flooded the hangar, washing out the artificial yellow glow. The tug vehicle hooked up to the nose gear of N894S. The engines began to spin, a low whine rising to a scream. I stood by the door as the giant bird was towed out into the daylight. The pilot looked down from the cockpit. He saw the old janitor standing at attention. He gave a thumbs up. I returned the gesture. I watched as the plane taxied to the runway. I watched it accelerate. I watched the nose lift. I watched tons of metal defy gravity, riding the air currents I had spent a lifetime mapping. It banked north, toward the Arctic, toward the route I had drawn on the glass. I checked my watch. On time, I whispered. Good job, Ryan. I picked up my broom. There was still dust in the corner of Bay 4. Shh. The sound of the broom was the only sound left, and it was perfect.